Well, Cherie Blair Casey is still with us to talk more about this campaign. And you started working with domestic abuse survivors quite early on in your career, didn't you?
Yeah, it's a strange thing because 1976, it's a long time ago, was when I first became a barrister. I was only 21. And there's a new act had come in, which was the Domestic Violence Act. And I think it's a symbol of how domestic violence was viewed at the time, that it was thought it was a good thing for young barristers to start off with, because it's something easy and just a domestic. And so that's how I started going to court and meeting week after week women, and the occasional man, by the way, but mainly women, who had experienced actual physical violence, because in those days it was all about actual physical violence,
not coercive control.
No, coercive control only came in 2015.
Yeah.
Yes. Are you quite surprised at, I don't know, the pace of change where the legals surrounding domestic abuse are concerned?
Well, that gives the impression it's been quick. I'm not sure it has actually been quick, frankly. I think for a long time, that attitude that it's just a domestic, we found in the police and we found in the courts, and those attitudes that we still hear, but less so, thankfully, today, which is, well, why do you put up with it? Why do you go back? Was still very, very prevalent then.
I mean, astonishingly, just to keep on that point, because you were saying you started in 76, that was only then that hitting was hitting your wife.
Well, it was well, before that, it was always a criminal offence, but that's much more difficult. Now it became a civil matter, which meant that you could get, on the balance of probabilities, orders, non-molestation, which could then be enforced by prison, or also actually to eject somebody from the matrimonial home.
And then raping your wife was 1991.
Yeah. Up until then, a woman was presumed to consent to sex whenever or wherever.
Did you know where the expression rule of thumb came from? That back in the day, you were allowed to hit your wife with anything less than the width of your thumb.
So now, of course,
we can say there's progress.
Now, of course, we've got online abuse to deal with. So do you think things are changing quickly enough?
I don't think they have changed quickly enough. And I think there's a real danger now with online abuse, because online abuse is so prevalent and so difficult to police. And I think it has a huge influence, particularly on young boys and men. And what we're seeing in the statistics, I think, is that they seem to have a much less strong reaction against domestic violence or any form of violence against women than perhaps older men do.
Yeah, because misogyny online for young men is rife, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, it really is. And a lot of them are following the Andrew Tates and people of the world, and it's horrendous. And like you say, some subjects, some victims of domestic abuse are between the ages of 13 and 18, and a lot of that is online.
Absolutely, because it's about young girls and their boyfriends. So they may not be living together, but that doesn't mean they aren't subject both to coercive control and also, sometimes as well, to physical abuse.
Yeah. I wanted to come back to the law, because there may be women out there, and I know there are, because I've spoken to some from doing the campaign. Women have been brave enough to reach out to me. And they say to me, look, I've been down the legal route. I've got a non-molestation order, or I've got a restraining order, but they're not being upheld. And so then women are still in danger. What can we do about that?
Well, it's partly, I think, a matter of education for the judges. And that has changed a lot. I mean, there was a period of my life when I was also a judge, a part-time judge, and the training that the judges... You know, back in 76, they didn't have any training. By the time I was a judge, there was training. And there's been an emphasis in the training of the judges to make judges aware of exactly what we're talking about when we talk about domestic abuse. But some judges, I'm afraid, and there are reported cases that show this, still take old-fashioned misogynistic attitudes. Many other judges take a different view.
Can I push you further and ask then, this training that they have to have, is this mandatory or is it optional?
No, it's mandatory. You have to, as a judge, first of all, you have to do training before you become a judge, and then you have to do regular training.
OK.
It isn't always about domestic abuse, of course. It's about all sorts of other things.
We should also point out there have been inroads. I was reading Dame Sandra Hawley's, when she stepped back from Refuge, she did a statement about how far we have come in that back in the day, you know, police would turn up with perpetrators at the refuge with a bunch of flowers going, oh, he wants to say sorry, you know, can she come back? Because they didn't understand the enormity of it. And also that when women left, we were talking earlier about people going, why don't you just leave, why don't you just leave? When they left, they were regarded to have made themselves intentionally homeless, so they didn't get any help.
Yeah.
So we have come on,
This is still a big problem, though, because, you know, where can you go? We don't have enough refuges.
Yeah.
There isn't space in many refuges, even when you get to the helpline. So we need to put more resources into that, which is difficult. And sometimes it can appear to be the least worst choice is to go back, unfortunately, because women convince themselves that, well, maybe I can manage, you know, what am I...
financial as
you
well.
have to disrupt your children, you're going to take them out of school, because if you go to a refuge, it's not going to be around the corner from your school.
But is it then to do with society's attitude towards those who are currently victims of domestic abuse and those who are survivors? One could argue that successive governments have failed to successfully deal with this issue, and it's not something that's going away. And yet, as you've just said, refuges are finding themselves with not enough resources, so they're closing, there's not enough spaces. But this isn't a problem that's going away. You can't just pretend it's not happening. So do you feel as though successive governments have failed men and women who are victims?
Well, I don't think it's just a question of the government's failure. I think it's a question of all of us, really, understanding the whole point, going back to what you said about misogyny and this idea that somehow or other, you know, women are there to be controlled by men.
Yes.
That women are not equal to men, that women aren't worthy of the same things as men, that somehow or other men are better. And we see that reflected even, dare I say it, these days, right at the very highest levels in America.
Yes.
Oh, well,
I do need to say, though, if you are a woman and you are watching this, do not feel like you are in a hopeless situation or that there aren't people out there that can help you. There will be space for you. Somebody will find you some kind of refuge and safety. So don't let this conversation stop you from reaching out.
No, no, of course.
It's about us too, and this year Refuge campaign is about red flags. It's about making sure, as we heard on the videotape, what's going on? Why is it that it seems like she's not replying to my messages? You know, why do we suddenly not see so much of my friend?
And when they talk about red flags, I know that you once had a case where a domestic abuser had attacked you. And I know we talk about red flags and everything, but did there ever seem any possibility within your mind that something would happen to you physically as a result of your work?
Well, obviously it did, because he tried to pull me down the stairs. But, you know, what I thought was, my God, I'm here, the people in the court that came and helped me. But, you know, my client was living behind closed doors with this person who was so convinced of his own righteousness that he thought it was perfectly acceptable for him to attack me in a courtroom. You know, so what was he like behind closed doors?
Is
much
there
more dangerous for her than it was for me. It was frightening.
Globally, is there a country that gets it... I mean, nobody gets it right, but is there a country that has a better checks and balances system for women to counteract this?
To be fair, I think we have a pretty good legal framework. It's about implementing that framework.
Right.
It's about resources, it's about training, it's about raising awareness, and it's about... I mean, I go on about it, but I think the whole question of the internet and influencers, and it's also a question for
and
men
parents
too.
as well, bringing up boys and girls to teach respect to your, you know...
But in the end, you know, the biggest influencers for boys should be their fathers, and their fathers should be speaking to them about respecting women.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a basic baseline, isn't it, that we should respect each other. And if you respect each other, you don't go around abusing them, degrading them, denigrating them, making them feel that they're Unworthy.
And that is in a perfect world, but unfortunately, lots of
We don't live in a
people don't
perfect
have
world.
that within their homes.
Their
unfortunately.
representation in their home.
Just to say, though, that we did contact the Ministry of Justice about our programme today, and they said the government is working to tackle perpetrators and address the root causes of abuse and violence. Ministers have launched the domestic abuse protection orders and set out a new drive to inform all victims of crime of their rights via the Victims Code. Next year, we'll allocate the highest number of Crown Court sitting days on record, so more criminals will have their day in court and more victims will seek the justice they deserve. So we shall see what happens. But for now, Cherie Blair, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.